Hello YouTube, this is Stick152. So I wanted to give you a rundown of the new asset localization that I've been working on. This is written as an internal module or internal tool, but if you've purchased the Radiation Zone Toolkit or the Signal Communications packs, this will be packaged with those, and you're free to use those as long as you abide by Unity's licensing terms. When you buy an asset, you can use it in your own projects. I'm not sure what they do about using it as other assets that you sell, so not sure there. But I'm considering going ahead and putting it on the asset store as a standalone asset. If you're interested, please let me know down in the comments, or post something on the forum. I'll put a link to the forum down in the description. But I got to talk to Unity's licensing guys to be sure, because I'm not sure whether I can have it included in an asset that I'm selling and then and then give that component away for free. Or there's already a really nice fancy asset or a localization toolkit on the asset store that does a lot more stuff than this one does. And I'm already working on several other projects, so I can't really devote the time and effort to make something to compete with that. And not that I'd want to. I mean, that whoever that publisher's got a really nice product. So, but for the case of this, for the localization for this, I wanted to do something that was really geared for my products or my projects. So I'm gonna kind of get started here. Essentially, this toolkit is smart enough to be able to basically look at the class you tell it to localize, and it can get all of the fields, and if they have tooltips, it'll get all those. It can also get all of your properties, so the public properties that are on here. And then what it does with that is it stores those in a language file. So essentially you have a JSON document that it writes that stores all that data. Now I haven't added one to this class yet, so in my base class here, what I do is in the actual custom editor for the class, you're going to declare a local variable of the localization manager type, and then in the on enable, you'll check to see if it's null, and if it's null, then you're going to go ahead and instantiate it, and you tell it the type of class that you're going to manage, and in this case it's demo class 2. So what it does when you do that, it goes through and it finds all these things, all the properties in the fields, gets all the information about them. And then to actually draw those properties, you just tell the localization manager that you want to draw this property, and you give it the name of the actual serialized property that you're going to draw, and then the name of the property, the public property. So it's this value here that it's looking for. So I should note that this does depend on the proper naming conventions. So the standard is if you have a field m_test string a, then your property should be this portion of it without the m_. And so that's what it's looking for. So essentially when it goes down these fields, it's checking to see, so when it's associating this tooltip with this friendly name or this property name, then it's looking for test string a as it's written here. Actually, it's all lowercase, so it's not case sensitive, so it casts it to lower, and then checks to see if it actually exists in this field name. So that's the only main caveat there. Okay, so once it does that, then it also checks for these static tooltips. So if you provide a tooltip here, the property field, if you do editor GUI layout and try to do a property field, if this is provided on this in the class itself, it doesn't matter what tooltip you give it, it will always draw this one. So I treat these as static, and so if these are provided, then it will auto-populate your tooltips for you, and it'll set them to read-only. So let me show you how it works. So in this case, I'm going to drag a demo class, and it's already populated this, and that's because in this class it already had a settings file, and it had some language files specified already, and that settings file specified what we were going to put on there. So it's already set to English US, so it's already picked the right one. that you had selected in your property files. And so that's basically stored. So if you turn off Unity, if you like I just added that class to an object, added the component to the object, it stores it if that's specified there. And these are all class based. So I also have one other one on this demo class, and that's separately maintained. So it has its own set of files versus what's in here. I tried using dictionaries, and that was a really smooth way to do it, but the problem was that Unity does not serialize and unserialize to dictionaries through the JSON serializer. And it just became a big nightmare to have to write my own, and it never worked right. So I went ahead and did it this way, and it just keeps it nice and compartmentalized, and I really like that a lot better. Okay, so what you can see is that each one of these has a tooltip, which we would expect because it's provided here. And so essentially, because that tooltip is already provided, that when I draw it, you have two different types. So if you actually look at the editor here and you go to the draw property field, basically I'm telling it, hey, you're going to draw this property, and I'm giving it a key to draw, and it's a static tooltip. So in the document, it actually has the static tooltip listed. So it finds the tooltip based on that key, which is the actual property name, and then it draws the property field. If a tooltip didn't exist, it does. In this case, it goes ahead and passes it through. It wouldn't matter because the tooltip would override it anyway. If I didn't provide a tooltip for one of these, if it was an empty string, or if it just didn't exist, if that key wasn't found, then it would just draw the default property field drawer. So it would just pass the the serialized property and whether or not to draw include the children in the draw. Okay, so go back to the editor here. Okay, so now let's take a look at that. So if you see it in here for the editor, I auto-populate this for you. So this is editing an existing one, and you can see that these are static. They're read-only, and this is the friendly name. So essentially, if you create a new one, then I go ahead and I populate all these for you. So what I do is I take the actual property name, and then I break it apart. I just basically do a regex on it and split it up into basic different strings, space delimited string, to give a friendly name. And then because these are read-only, then I'll go ahead and auto-populate those for you. So in this case, the only thing you have to provide is the language for the file. For a case like this where you've only got a few fields, it's nice to have because you don't have to type all those things. In the demo of the radiation zone toolkit I'm going to show in just a minute, you'll see why that's so nice and why I actually implemented it. And we can look at another one here, and there again it's going to show you the English tooltip because that's specified in the code. And I apologize in advance if this is Google Translate. So basically I just put in some stuff in Google Translate and this is what it gave me. So if this is gibberish, I'm sorry, I apologize. So let's look at that file. So you can see that I did provide tooltips, but they're not being drawn because those are hard-coded. So if I actually go and I comment this guy out and rebuild it, then when I go back over to that, you can see now it's got the localized tooltip. Okay. And so also if you create a new one, you'll see that that tooltip is not provided static, and I haven't saved it to the file for new. So it's gonna let me put in whatever I want for that. Okay, so now say you have other language files that you have backed up someplace. You've started over in a new project and you want to copy new ones over. What I can do is let me go ahead and copy over one over here. So I've added a new one to the file. And you can see this only has 3, and it doesn't have the static flag, or the field key value thing in there. So this will add it. It's smart enough to actually notice that and add it. So, and you notice it picked it up because it refreshed itself. You can also manually refresh. If you make a change, you can manually refresh, and it'll go back through and it'll reparse everything. So if I select this guy, you can see some of these came up, but there again, this one has the tooltip because I have it commented out, but otherwise it's English tooltips. So if I try to edit this, you'll see that these fields didn't exist in the file. So it's going to go ahead. And you'll notice that on the test string A, there was a test string, but not test string A. So if you actually look at this, I have a test string key, but not a test string A key, and that's what it's actually looking for. So what it'll do is it would actually write that for me. So if I go back in and edit it, then I could actually fill in these values of the friendly names. And if those weren't already provided, it would allow me to edit the tooltips as well. Another thing that it can do, so in the case of one, it has 5 properties here, but only 3 in the file. It'll add them to you, so then you could save it and add them to the file. Let me just go ahead and actually do that. I don't speak Italian, so okay, so I could save that, and then if I go back in there, you'll notice that it actually replaced all the contents with the proper data. So it rewrites the file for you. Okay, so now using that same file, what if I've gone through and gotten rid of these extra strings? Let's see. I should just be able to get rid of the. Let's see if I can get these guys. And these guys, and then in the editor, yeah, there we go. I knew I was missing something. Okay, rebuild that guy. Okay, so now we can see that those are missing. Those are gone now, but the file specifies 5 parameters. So what it'll do is if I go in and I edit this guy, it takes them out. So it knows that they're no longer there. So if I save this, then now when I go back and look at that file, it's truncated. It actually set the file to what it has. So it's smart enough to know if you change things, it'll change your file for you. Okay. Let's see, I think I got everything. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, and so, and let's see, to go to a more advanced project, so this is what it looks like in the radiation zone toolkit. So in here, I'm inheriting from the base radiation class, our radiation zone class, and so you can see that here. This is a much bigger language file. And in this case, there's also some differences compared to the other one. So first and foremost, if we look at the localization data, if we want to edit this current one, so I've got a nice scroll here. I auto-populate these when you create a new one. So that makes it really, really nice. So you don't have to go in and manually type all those. Now you can see, like this one, the outer zone color is empty because in the base class I don't specify that. I actually let the derived class do it. And in this case, I actually define it in the on-editor GUI. So when I'm drawing it, I'll provide a tooltip. So I'll show you that I added functionality there. So if you notice in here, let me show you the same thing. So the outer zone color, I do specify a default value here. So the color for the outline of this zone. So where that gets used, let's take a look at the code. So where that gets used is in here. If we look at the base radiation zone, let me open this guy up. You'll notice on the outer zone color, I don't specify a tooltip, and I don't in the radiation sphere as well. So there's basically nothing defined in here. This is just because it inherits from a base class. So, but where I do specify it is in on-inspector GUI. So essentially, I don't know why I said on-editor GUI before. Essentially, you can see here I'm using the default. So if it's a background zone, then I just use the outer zone color, and that was specified as the color for the outline of this zone. Okay, so I'm just using the default. And then down in here, if it's an isolation zone, I'm using the default as well. And if it's a standard zone, then for the outer zone color, I actually specify an extra tooltip. So I'm overriding it with my own tooltip here. There again, if it was actually, if the tooltip was specified, that flag was set on the property, or oh, sorry, on the field, then this wouldn't matter. It would just do the one that was in the field. And also, this will override if I have one specified in the file. Like say I had some, because like you can notice that this overrides what I specify in my language file. So if you were localizing this in a different language, you would want to go ahead and make sure that that string is a wide character string in whatever language, if it needs to be wide character, but in whatever language you would want it to be in for the override. But I give you that functionality to be able to do that. And that's pretty much it. So I tried to find every little way that I could break it and make it work, make it smart enough to be able to detect it. Like I said, you can delete everything up to the streaming assets folder, and it'll automatically go in and rebuild things where it needs. That way you can't. It's really difficult to yank the rug out from under it. So anyway, so I'm going through and getting this localized. You can also, like, say you just don't like the names for these, you can change these however you want. You just go in and edit current, and then you just change the friendly name to be whatever you want. And the comments, you can change them in the code if you'd like. In this particular case, for this project, I just happen to have a lot of them hard-coded because they're just kind of a default value. I didn't have this implemented at the time that I wrote this project originally. Otherwise, I would have just done it all in here. And I might. In the 2.0 version, if I do a 2.0 version of this project or another .rev of it, I might go ahead and do that. But at any rate, it's looking like another few days to a week to get this all fully fleshed out and up and working and submitted. And however long the asset store submission time is going to be. And if I do decide to sell this or give, put it up for free as a standalone asset, then I'll post that in the forum. And like I said, I'll put a link to the forum down in the description. And if you have any questions or comments, if you have any feature requests, anything like that, just be sure and drop me a line in the forum. I have different sub-forums for all the different assets that I publish, as well as just general Q&A sections, general conversational sections and stuff. Anyway, well, thanks for your time, and take care.